True story, my son said I was dead. He didn't know what I had signed. People think that when you grow old, you stop noticing things. They think your silence means confusion, that your calm means weakness. The day my own son told people I was dead, I understood how wrong they were. And I understood something else as well. Silence can be preparation. I am 72 years old now. I have lived long enough to know that life does not break you all at once. It wears you down slowly, quietly, through small disappointments that pile up over years. I was never a woman of luxury. I worked with my hands. I raised my family with effort, not comfort. My husband died when our son was still young. A sudden illness. 1 month he was strong. The next, I was standing alone at his grave, holding a boy who did not yet understand what loss meant. From that day forward, I became everything: mother and father, provider and protector. I cleaned offices at night. I ironed clothes for neighbors. I skipped meals so my son could eat better. I never complained. When we finally bought our small house, I cried alone in the kitchen. It wasn't beautiful, but it was ours. The deed was in my name. I didn't think much of it then. I never imagined I would need to. My son grew up. He studied. He worked. He married. At first I was grateful. I welcomed my daughter-in-law into my home with the same heart I had used to raise her husband. I cooked her favorite meals. I listened more than I spoke. She smiled politely, but her eyes were always measuring things: the house, the furniture, the way I lived. She never said anything cruel at first. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke clearly. Little comments began to appear. This place is old. People our age need more space. You must be tired living like this. I nodded. I smiled. My son rarely spoke when she did. He had learned a new kind of silence, the kind that protects comfort, not truth. At family dinners, conversations slowly shifted away from me. Plans were made without my knowledge. Decisions were discussed as if I were furniture in the room. Still, I said nothing. Age teaches you that not every battle needs a response. Some need observation. The first real humiliation came quietly. One afternoon, I returned from the market and noticed my bedroom door was locked. That had never happened before. My daughter-in-law opened it for me with an impatient sigh. "We needed space to organize some things," she said. My clothes were piled on the bed, drawers emptied. She had reorganized my life without asking. My son stood in the doorway. He avoided my eyes. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling I had paid for, wondering when my presence had become an inconvenience. Weeks passed, then months. The words became sharper. "You should think about the future. At your age, living alone isn't practical. There are places that take care of people like you, people like me." I realized then that I was no longer seen as a mother. I was a problem to be managed. The betrayal did not come with shouting. It came with paperwork. One morning, I overheard my daughter-in-law speaking on the phone. "Yes, the house will be available soon," she said. "No, she won't be a problem." She laughed softly. "She's basically gone already." Gone. That word stayed with me. A few days later, my son sat across from me at the kitchen table. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom," he said, "we told some people you moved away." I waited. "It's easier this way." Easier for whom? I wondered. Then he said it. "People think you're not around anymore." Not around. Dead, without the courtesy of the word. I folded my hands in my lap. My heart did not race. My voice did not shake. I simply nodded. Because by then, I already understood something they did not. Silence is not surrender. Silence is time. After that conversation, something shifted in the house. Not loudly, not suddenly. It shifted the way dust settles when no one is watching. I became invisible. Meals were prepared without asking if I would eat. Lights were turned off in rooms I was still using. Conversations stopped when I entered. I was still there, breathing, walking, remembering. But to them, I had already been erased. And strangely, that gave me clarity. When people believe you are gone, they stop pretending. My daughter-in-law no longer hid her impatience. She spoke openly now, as if I were not in the room. "She doesn't need much," she told my son once. "She barely uses anything. At her age, simplicity is better." Simplicity, I learned, was her word for absence. My son nodded. He had grown into a man who avoided discomfort at all costs, even if that cost was his mother. One afternoon, I noticed changes in the house: documents on the table, folders I had never seen before, phone calls that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. I did not ask. I watched. Age sharpens your attention. You notice patterns younger people miss. They were planning something, and they believed I was too tired, too slow, too old to understand. The day they took my house keys from the hook by the door, they didn't ask. My daughter-in-law held them up casually. "We'll keep these," she said, "in case of emergencies." I smiled politely. Inside, something hardened. Not anger, resolve. That night, I sat on my bed and looked around the room that had once been my refuge. My husband's old coat still hung behind the door. The walls held decades of quiet effort. I understood then that waiting would no longer be enough. Preparation had to begin. The next morning, I left the house early. No one noticed. That was my advantage. I walked 3 blocks to a small office I had passed many times but never entered before. The sign read, "Law Office, Estate and Property Matters." I sat in the waiting room for nearly an hour. I didn't mind. Waiting had become familiar. The lawyer was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a careful voice. She asked me why I had come. I didn't cry. I didn't exaggerate. I told her the truth. About my husband, about the house, about my son, about the words "she's basically gone." She listened. When I finished, she folded her hands. "You are not gone," she said. "And the law still sees you." Those words mattered more than she knew. She asked about the deed. I told her it was in my name. She nodded slowly. "Then you still have choices," she said. Choices. It had been a long time since anyone suggested I had those. Over the next weeks, I returned to that office quietly, always in the mornings, always alone. We spoke about documents, about authority, about what silence could protect if it was paired with preparation. I did not tell my son. I did not tell my daughter Lena. They believed they had already won. People make mistakes when they believe the outcome is certain. At home, the humiliation deepened. My bedroom was moved. They said it was temporary. I knew better. My belongings were reduced to what fit in 2 suitcases. The rest, they said, would be stored. Stored where? I never found out. Then came the day they asked me to sign something. It was presented gently. A form. A pen placed carefully in my hand. "It's just a formality," my son said. "To make things easier." Easier. I looked at the paper without reacting. I asked for time. They exchanged glances. Impatience flickered across my daughter-in-law's face. But they agreed. They always believed I would comply, eventually. That night, I did not sleep. I sat by the window and thought about everything I had built, everything I had endured, and everything they assumed I would surrender quietly. They were wrong, but they would not learn that yet. A week later, I overheard something that confirmed everything. My daughter-in-law was speaking loudly, confident I was not listening. "We'll sell as soon as it's settled," she said. "She won't interfere. People already think she's dead anyway." Dead again. This time, I smiled, because by then, the groundwork was already laid, and silence had done its work. After that conversation, I stopped pretending, not outwardly. Outwardly, I was the same quiet woman they had grown used to ignoring. But inside, every word, every movement, every glance became information. They believed I was fading. In truth, I was paying closer attention than ever before. The papers returned to the kitchen table 2 days later. My son sat across from me again. My daughter-in-law stood behind him, arms crossed. "This is important," my son said. "We need to move forward." He slid the document toward me. I read slowly. I had learned long ago that rushing only benefits the person who wants something from you. The words were carefully chosen. Legal, polite, irreversible. They wanted authority. Not immediately, but soon. I placed the paper back on the table. "I need more time," I said. My daughter-in-law exhaled sharply. "How much time?" she asked. I looked at her calmly. "As much as I need." That answer displeased her, which told me everything. The atmosphere in the house grew colder after that. They stopped hiding their irritation. My meals were smaller. My presence less welcome. My son avoided conversations altogether now. He had chosen his comfort fully. One evening, I heard voices raised in the living room. I stood at the hallway, unseen. "She's delaying on purpose," my daughter-in-law said. "She's doing this to control us." Control. I almost laughed. If only she understood how long control had already slipped through her fingers. The next morning, I returned to the lawyer's office. This time, the conversation was different. I told her about the paper. She read it carefully. Then she looked at me and shook her head. "They're counting on your trust," she said, "and on your silence." I nodded. Silence, I understood well. She explained options, paths that did not involve confrontation, documents that did not require permission. I listened. When she finished, I made my decision, quietly, firmly. After that day, everything I did was deliberate. Every signature, every visit, every choice. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was emotional. I was not seeking revenge. I was protecting dignity. At home, the shift was subtle. They became confident. Too confident. My daughter-in-law spoke openly about renovations, about listings, about what they would do once everything was settled. She assumed the outcome was already written. People are careless when they believe the story has ended. Then came the day my name disappeared. I noticed it on an envelope. Mail addressed only to my son. Bills I had always paid no longer reached me. I asked about it once. "It's easier if we handle things," my son said. Easier. The word followed me like a shadow. The final humiliation arrived quietly. A neighbor stopped me on the sidewalk. "I heard about your mother," she said gently. I looked at her. "I am my mother," I replied. She flushed. "Oh, I'm sorry. They said you passed." Passed. The world was being rewritten without me. And still, I said nothing. That night, I packed my suitcases. Only what mattered. Documents, photographs, memories that could not be stolen. I left the room spotless. I wanted no excuse for disrespect. The next morning my son told me they had arranged a place for me to stay. "Temporary," he said, "for your comfort." I thanked him. He looked relieved. They believed the final step had been taken. They were wrong. Because by then, every document was already in place. Every signature accounted for. Every silence purposeful. They thought they had buried me. But the truth was simply waiting for the right moment to stand up. The call came on a quiet afternoon. I was sitting by the window of the small room they had arranged for me, watching people hurry past lives they did not understand. The lawyer's voice was steady. "They're moving forward," she said. "The sale process has begun." I thanked her. I did not feel fear, only certainty. 2 days later, my son called. His tone was light, almost cheerful. "Everything is almost settled," he said. "You don't need to worry anymore." Worry, that word no longer belonged to me. I told him I would come by the house one last time to collect a few things. He hesitated, then agreed. They were not afraid anymore. That was their mistake. The house looked different when I returned. New furniture, boxers stacked by the walls, plans already unfolding. My daughter-in-law barely acknowledged me. She spoke to me the way one speaks to someone passing through. Temporary, unimportant. The real moment came the following morning. They had scheduled a meeting. A buyer, a real estate agent, and a lawyer, not mine. They were confident. They believed this was a formality. I arrived quietly and took a seat. No one offered me coffee. No one asked how I was. The papers were placed on the table. Voices filled the room. Numbers, signatures, assumptions. Then the door opened again, and my lawyer walked in. The room shifted. My daughter-in-law straightened. My son frowned. "This is unnecessary," my son said quickly. "We've already handled everything." The lawyer smiled politely. "I'm afraid you haven't," she said. She placed a folder on the table, opened it, and began to read. Not loudly, not dramatically, calmly. She explained what had been signed months earlier, what authority still belonged to me, what could not be transferred, what had been legally protected. The house, the deed, the future they had already spent in their minds. My daughter-in-law interrupted her. "That's impossible," she said. She agreed. The lawyer looked at her. She did not. She replied. She prepared. Silence filled the room. My son's face changed. Confusion first, then fear. He looked at me for the first time in months. Really looked. I met his eyes. I did not smile. I did not scold. I did not explain. The buyer stood up. "I think we should postpone," he said. The agent nodded. The meeting dissolved without argument. No shouting, no chaos, just consequences. After they left, my son spoke. His voice was smaller now. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. I took my time before answering. "Because you told the world I was dead," I said calmly. "And the dead are not asked for permission." My daughter-in-law said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Her confidence had collapsed. Her plans erased. I gathered my coat. I did not reclaim the house. I did not need to. What I reclaimed was dignity. Weeks later, arrangements were made. Not for them. For me. A place of my choosing. On my terms. I hear sometimes that they struggle now, that relationships are strained, that silence has entered their home. I do not celebrate that, but I accept it. If there is one thing life has taught me, it is this: age does not erase wisdom, silence does not mean surrender, and respect delayed often arrives as regret. If you are listening to this, remember, do not mistake patience for weakness. Do not treat elders as obstacles, and never assume someone is gone just because they stopped speaking. Some truths wait quietly, and when they rise, they do not need to shout. They are already final.